What's up, heathens? How ya doing? I'm the Godless engineer, and I critically analyze apologists' claims to give you the best arguments and information so that you can stand up and use your voice. Today, we're going to be taking a look at a clip from a call-in show that I had last year. In this clip, I talked to a subscriber named Vandy. He is thoroughly convinced that Jesus is definitely a historical figure. The problem that I have is that he doesn't really have good evidence to say that Jesus actually existed. He just seems to appeal to the authorities. We do get into some good conversation over some evidence that he feels is the strongest evidence for historical Jesus, but ultimately he relies on the authorities in the field. These authorities would also be the authorities that believe that Jesus resurrected from the dead. So, if you want to know what evidence Vandy considers to be the best evidence for historical Jesus, then please stay tuned. Hello, who am I speaking with?
Hey, my name is Vandy, V-A-N-D-Y.
Vandy? Okay.
And I'm not in front of my computer, which is normally where I would prefer to be to engage on this topic, because I like to use my Google Foo. But I heard that you didn't have any callers yet, so I decided I'd call in.
Oh yeah.
I've been interested. I'm an atheist, and I've been interested in biblical history and New Testament scholarship and the historical Jesus since for about the last year or so, sort of when I realized I was an atheist.
Okay.
And I have come to the conclusion that I do accept that Jesus was almost certainly a historical figure based largely on sort of the scholarly consensus, and in particular sort of if I had to point at specific details that I find compelling, it would probably be the number one would be Paul mentions meeting Cephas and James, the brother of the Lord, in a way where it linguistically seems to imply that he meant an actual brother.
How do you figure that?
So because he mentions, I don't have the passage right in front of me, but
do you want me to read it for you?
Yeah, sure. Do you have it?
Well, I mean, I can get to it real quick because
I don't remember which. I think it was in Galatians, but
yeah.
I can't remember exactly.
Right, it's Galatians 1:19. I'm reading from the Greek interlinear. It says, "Other, however, of the apostles, none I saw, if not James, the brother of the Lord."
Yeah. So the way he describes it, he mentions that, I believe right after he mentions that he met Peter or Cephas or whatever. And that word could be used in a way that, and I admit this, it could be used in a way that implies not necessarily a familial relationship, but just a fraternal in the non-familial relationship. But to me, the fact that he specifically applies this moniker to James rather than, and does not apply it to Peter, seems to indicate to me that he is specifying that individual as being the actual physical brother.
But you see, the thing that doesn't convince me there, Vandy, is the fact that whenever Paul uses the word brother, he uses the exact same word, being adelphos, which means either, like you said, but this particular verse right here seems to be distinguishing between apostolic and non-apostolic Christians. What to you seems to indicate that is not the case?
Well, mostly, so I'm not a Greek scholar, but to me, it doesn't sound right. It sounds like he's talking about an actual person, and also, even if he is talking about, if he's not using it to mean a familial thing, he's still talking about individuals who I think he at least believes had some sort of relationship with Jesus. And
he never indicates anybody as being an eyewitness at all or being a disciple.
Well, I'm not sure I agree with that. I think that statement about meeting Peter you can interpret that as being that they were eyewitnesses to this. He doesn't describe any particular stories about that. That's true.
No.
But
He never. No. I'm so sorry. I've got to correct you. He never whatsoever, and this is a hard thing that I'm pressing on here. He never indicates him as being an eyewitness or a disciple.
Okay, what would that look like? What would that look like?
What would it look like if he was indicating that somebody was an eyewitness? Well,
because when he says he went to go and check to make sure that he was teaching the correct gospel. No. You're right. That's not an explicit
that's
statement.
not what he was doing. That's Galatians 2. That's not what he was doing. What he was doing is that he was going to Jerusalem to confer with the other apostles to see if the gospel he was teaching was the same as the other what the other apostles were teaching. Not that it was the correct gospel, but just that it was the same. Yeah. So he wasn't trying to collect information. He was comparing his to the other ones. And he was simply the result of that was that he did not add, like they weren't teaching anything different than he was already teaching.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. I guess so. I gave you the one sort of piece that I'm aware of in the text that most convinces me. However, to be entirely honest, what convinces me is more the fact that it is accepted by essentially everybody who's gotten a PhD on this subject. Not everybody.
Yeah, you got to admit. You got to admit that's a really poor argument, right? I mean, that's obviously a poor argument.
It's in a sense. But
okay, can I ask you something real quick?
Sure.
Okay, prior to the 1960s, everybody with a PhD, in science, in chemistry, and all of that, agreed that the lead that was in a lot of products, including gasoline, was not adding to the lead in our environment. Now, that at that point in time, every expert in the field agreed that the lead in gasoline was not contributing to the lead in the environment, and there were even scientists that did direct work on it that where they quote unquote showed that lead in gasoline was not harming the environment. So, would you agree then, if you were at that time? Would you agree that lead was in gasoline was not harmful to the environment?
Yes, and I would be wrong.
Yeah, you would. And do you know how many people went against this consensus?
Well, eventually somebody who convinced somebody.
No. See, this is where a lot of people get it wrong.
I don't exactly know what you're asking there.
Okay. My point is that one scientist, it was, I forget his name, one scientist who developed the clean room in order to determine the age of the Earth, he found out in the process of developing a clean room to determine the age of the Earth, found that the lead that was in gasoline was contributing to, the increased lead in the environment. And so he presented this places. He told people that it was that it was causing more lead to become prominent in the environment, and he was laughed out, like he was pushed out because the consensus was controlled by the gas companies, and so the gas companies paid people off to do counter research and refute him. And he went as far as to go to the I think it was Antarctica. He went and he got frozen ice that was not contaminated with the current levels of lead. And what he was able to show, is that the amount of lead in the environment substantially increased once lead gas was being used. Now, keep in mind, this was one person that faced the entire consensus of the scientific community at the time. So, using the consensus to generally form like an opinion on a belief is fine. It's a fine way to go about it. But
that's what I'm doing, for the record.
Well, I understand that, but the problem is that there are currently 2 peer-reviewed scholarly books that have examined this and have examined the evidence. And so now, instead of just appealing to the evidence, you have to actually show in the evidence why he existed, because the consensus has been contested.
Yeah, so I acknowledge that. So I assume you're talking about Richard Carrier and somebody else, or not?
Well, there's Richard Carrier and Raphael Lataster.
I'm not familiar with him. Okay, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah,
I would suppose the other thing is it just generally seems more plausible that there was a historical Jesus, because I disagree. I don't think that Paul he doesn't come across as celestial to me when I read Paul personally. I can sort of see where it comes from, and I think some of the hypotheses about the various dying and rising gods and Zoroastrianism, when I have looked at those in more detail, they have not been convincing.
Okay, I guess you're being very vague about what arguments. So in order for me to actually,
okay, sorry.
No, that's fine.
No problem. Yeah, I don't know the topic well enough to be more specific.
Oh no, that's fine. It's tough for me to actually give you good information or responses based on just sort of a vague thing. The thing though with like Zoroastrianism and the other cults that affected Christianity is a thing called syncretism. And I don't know if maybe you might want to look that up and see what that's like. But basically what syncretism was various cult ideas were used in conjunction with Greek Hellenistic religious ideas in order to change Judaism into Christianity, which seems to be what happened. Now, as far as Zoroastrianism goes, whenever you look at it, you're not looking for a one-to-one comparison. If you're going into that, obvious,
Certainly not, I said.
Right. But if you look at the elements of Zoroastrianism or the Isis and Osiris cult or any of the other cults that had dying and rising gods, you can see how, like, what elements resonated with the Jews and they used in order to create their own version of a dying and rising God, which is Jesus. I mean, you would agree that Jesus is a dying and rising God, right?
Sure. I don't know enough about whether or not that term, dying and rising God, has a sort of accepted package in the scholarly literature. So I'm hesitant to latch on to a phrase that might carry more baggage that I'm unaware of. But yeah, sure.
Okay, well, I mean, generally with dying and rising gods, you what you have is the Savior who dies for a purpose, and then is resurrected as a way to further the point of the religious cult, and sort of like a redeemer almost. So I mean, I would just I would definitely, if I were you, I would look into things like syncretism and the dying and rising God thing. I don't know if you've read much of like Richard Carrier's work, or if you have on the historicity of Jesus, but I don't know. Whenever I can host these again, and you want to call in, maybe we can have a bit more specific discussion. But as far as
I was going to call in later on in the show, but I knew you were aching for callers. So.
Oh, no, I mean, I would have, I would have figured something out. But in any case, as far as Paul goes, I don't read the text like you do, because the Galatians 1:19 by itself does not read as if he's talking about a blood relative. It actually reads ambiguous to me. I don't know exactly what he's talking about whenever he says brother of the Lord. What I do know though is that when you analyze all of the uses of brother in reference to somebody, like Paul, he only mentions it in the fraternal sense ever. So you would actually be special pleading for this one particular case, especially in the face of later on in Galatians when he's talking about bringing along a wife. He actually calls the wives sisters because they're sisters of the Lord, because that's a prime component of Paul's theology, is that once you're a baptized Christian, you're part of the family of God and are therefore a brother or sister of God or the Lord or Jesus, right? So, I mean, there's a mountain of evidence against that. So, I mean, unless you mean that Paul was talking about apostles and Christians marrying their literal sisters and just having more incest, which, I mean, honestly, that wouldn't be the first time in Christian history. Unless he was meaning that specifically, I don't think that the whole reading of brother specifically meaning blood brother as being all that clear. I'm not making the case that it means that that it's definitely talking about a fraternal brother. I'm saying that it's ambiguous and you can't really tell, but that I feel like the evidence leans in the direction of fraternal because of how he uses that particular word.
Okay.
So I appreciate you calling in, though, and having a conversation with me. I do have a couple other people on the line.
Oh, yeah, no problem. I'll hop off then. No problem.
Okay, no, I hope that you'll come back.
Thanks for taking my call.
Oh, yeah, no problem. I hope that you'll call back again whenever I can do this again, and maybe we can have a discussion on another particular topic or more reasons why you're not a mythicist.
Yeah, sure.
All right, man.
No problem. Thanks for taking my call, and I'll let you go.
All right, man. I'll talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Wow. This was a really good conversation. I'm so glad that Vandy called in so that we could have that discussion. I'm still not convinced by the authorities that Jesus definitely existed in history because their evidence is so shoddy. And the evidence that was provided here wasn't all that convincing, but hey, I would love to know what you think down in the comments, so be sure to leave your thoughts down below. And hey, while you're down there, why don't you smash that like button and subscribe if you like this kind of content. Don't forget to stand up and use your voice. Bye, heathens!